Distinguished Deputy Prime Minister of Republic of Serbia and Minister of Culture and Media, distinguished Mayor of Belgrade, dear Belgrade Museum Director, Your Excellencies, dear ambassadors, artists and experts from African countries, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the online conference Contemporary Art of Africa in the Era of the Pandemic, organized by the Museum of African Art and Color Media Communications in partnership with the Ministry of Culture and Media and the city of Belgrade. At today's conference, we will have the opportunity to answer some questions concerning the impact of the pandemic on the contemporary art, creative processes, new phenomena, art forms and contexts in the work of artists of African descent and those who create art on the African continent. Also, we will hear thoughts and experiences on how the COVID-19 pandemic affected cultural institutions in Africa, the work of contemporary African artists, as well as the themes, processes, contexts, forms and shapes in the field of contemporary art that this pandemic has brought to the fore. And now, ladies and gentlemen, it is my pleasure to announce the special guest of honor, Mrs. Maja Gojković, Deputy Prime Minister of the Republic of Serbia and Minister of Culture and Media. Mrs. Gojković, welcome.
Vaše ekscelencije, uvaženi gradonačelniče, gospodine Radojčiću, poštovana direktorko Muzeja afričke umetnosti, gospođo Aleksić, dame i gospodo, veliko mi je zadovoljstvo što mogu da vam se obratim na otvaranju konferencije Savremena umetnost Afrike u doba pandemije koja se održava povodom Dana Afrike. Da podsjetim na današnji datum, svet obeležava dan kada je osnovana organizacija Afričkog jedinstva, današnja Afrička unija. Srbija je posvećena jačanju odnosa sa tradicionalnim prijateljima zemljama Afrike, a potvrda te iskrene želje je odluka da 25. maj, Dan Afrike, zvanično obeležava kao Dan prijateljstva sa narodima Afrike. Pandemija COVID-19, za koju se već sada može reći da je svetu nanela ogromnu štetu i stavila čovečanstvo pred velike izazove, bitno je uticala na sve društvene oblasti, pa tako i na kulturu. Danas ćemo imati priliku da čujemo raznovrsna iskustva i steknemo širu sliku o tome kako i koliko je pandemija uticala na savremenu umetnost ne samo na tlu Afrike, već i u našoj zemlji. Dame i gospodo, drago mi je što mogu da kažem da je Srbija među zemljama koje su na ovu globalnu opasnost dala adekvatne odgovore, pokazujući tako odgovornost prema svojim građanima. U oblasti kulture, pozorišta, muzeji, galerije i druge ustanove u našoj zemlji veći deo trajanja pandemije bile su otvorene za publiku uz poštovanje svih epidemioloških mera. Na taj način kultura je još jednom pokazala da je prilagodljiva svim okolnostima, pa i onim krajnje nepovoljnim. Kulturni sadržaj u online formatu ili uživo u velikoj meri predstavljali su lek za dušu i doprineli da se negativni efekti pandemije ublaže. Pored toga, Vlada Republike Srbije i Ministarstvo kulture i informisanja u 2 navrata opredelili su pomoć za samostalne umetnike, među kojima je bilo i onih koji usled karantinskih uslova nisu mogli da se bave svojim poslom. Država je time iskazala jasan stav da je kultura bitan element nacionalnog identiteta i svakako ne manje važna u odnosu na druge delatnosti. Dame i gospodo, iskreno me raduje činjenica da decenijima unazad Srbija gaje prijateljske odnose sa državama afričkog kontinenta. Ti odnosi nisu dobri samo u politici i ekonomiji, već i u oblasti kulture. U Beogradu se nalazi jedini muzej u ovom delu Evrope koji je isključivo posvećen kulturama i umetnostima afričkog kontinenta, o čemu će svakako više govoriti direktorka Muzeja afričke umetnosti. I u zbirkama drugih muzeja u Srbiji, naročito u Muzeju Jugoslavije, čuvaju se vredni predmeti koji potiču iz Afrike i koji su prikazivani na izložbama širom sveta. Preko zbirke i kolekcije muzeja i galerije u Srbiji, kao i zahvaljujući gostujućim izložbama afričkih ustanova i umetnika, javnost u Srbiji imala je i ima priliku da u dobroj meri upozna kulturu ovog kontinenta. Ministarstvo kulture i informisanja nastojeće da publici u Srbiji još više približi bogatstvo i kolorit afričke kulture. Iako vezane za različite kontinente i društvene istorijske kontekste i dešavanja, afrička i srpska kultura imaju dosta toga zajedničkog. Naši narodi vekovima su bili vođeni idejom slobode i taj ideal često je bio motiv umetničkih dela koje su stvarana u vašim zemljama i u Srbiji. Prava umetnost govori jezikom koji svi razumeju, šaljući poruke prijateljstva i tolerancije. Verujem da između naše zemlje i država čiji su ambasadori prisutni danas ovde, ali i ostalih zemalja iz Afrike, postoji još dosta prostora za širenje saradnje i jačanje kulturnih veza. Svi zajedno moramo razmišljati korak napred, odnosno šta ćemo raditi i kako ćemo sarađivati u budućnosti kada se život vrati u normalu. Pandemija je pokazala da digitalni sadržaj i online događaji mogu biti i jesu dobar odgovor na vanredne okolnosti, ali da fizičko prisustvo i žive događaje ipak ništa ne može da zameni. To se pokazalo i pre 4 dana u Veneciji, na izuzetno zapaženom otvaranju srpskog paviljona na Bijenalu arhitekture. Dame i gospodo, kao što je uspešno odgovorila na izazove pandemije, Srbija je spremna da nakon njenog prestanka nastavi da svesrdno podržava savremeno stvaralaštvo, čuva kulturno nasleđe i jača kulturne veze na međunarodnom planu. Sa zadovoljstvom mogu da kažem da su afričke države među prioritetima u međunarodnoj kulturnoj saradnji naše zemlje. Neka i ova konferencija posluži tome da pošaljemo snažnu poruku da je kultura jedna, nedeljiva i da pripada čitavom čovečanstvu. Na nama je da jačajući kulturnu saradnju širimo i njene potencijale. Proglašavam konferenciju Savremena umetnost Afrike u doba pandemije otvoreno. Hvala.
Dear audience and participants, a warm welcome also to Mr. Zoran Radojičić, Mayor of Belgrade. Mr. Radojičić.
Poštovana ministarko Gojković, Vaše ekscelencije, poštovana gospođo Aleksić. Zahvaljujem se na pozivu da govorim na otvaranju konferencije o savremenoj afričkoj umetnosti, koja zbog poznatih okolnosti, nažalost, mora da se održi u online formatu. Proteklih godinu dana su izmenile mnogo toga u našim životima. Lekcija je bila teška i plaćena je visoka cena, ali čini mi se da smo tokom ovog teškog perioda naučili jednu važnu stvar, da život cenimo više i da mu se više radujemo. To novostečeno iskustvo, tu životnu radost, verujem, možemo da primenimo na sve sfere života, a posebno na stvaralaštvo, umetnost i kulturu. 25. maj 1963. godine je važan dan u istoriji savremenog sveta. Tog dana je osnovana organizacija Afričkog jedinstva, zbog čega se ovaj dan obeležava kao Dan Afrike. Dan Afrike je odavno prevazišao granice afričkog kontinenta, pa se tako ovaj praznik nizom manifestacija obeležava širom sveta, pa i kod nas. Zato i Beograd sa velikim zadovoljstvom, kao tradicionalno kosmopolitski grad, obeležava Dan Afrike. Iz tog razloga smo danas simbolično ovde u Muzeju afričke umetnosti i ovu priliku koristim da kao gradonačelnik prestonice Srbije poželim srećan Dan Afrike pre svega prisutnim ambasadorima afričkih zemalja, ali i svim stanovnicima ovog prelepog kontinenta. Ovom prilikom bih takođe iskoristio da se osvrnem na još jedan važan događaj u savremenoj svetskoj istoriji, čiju godišnjicu obeležavamo ove godine. Pre tačno 60 godina, 1961. godine, osnovan je Pokret nesvrstanih, koji je promovisao univerzalne principe jednakosti i miroljubive koegzistencije. Naravno, Srbija će značajan jubilej obeležiti kako ga ovaj važan pokret i zaslužuje, pa su s tim u vezi već počeli dogovori. Imajući u vidu i ovu činjenicu, moje je zadovoljstvo još veće zbog toga što danas među učesnicima imamo ambasadore Alžira, Maroka, Tunisa i Egipta, zemalja koje su članice Pokreta nesvrstanih. Mi sa ovim zemljama, kao i sa mnogim drugim afričkim zemljama, imamo tradicionalno dobre odnose i odličnu saradnju na različitim poljima. Kultura je svakako jedna od tih polja, A koliko mi u Srbiji i Beogradu cenimo afričku kulturu, dokaz je i činjenica da je Beograd jedini grad u regionu koji ima muzej posvećen isključivo afričkoj umetnosti. To je nešto zbog čega su svi Beograđani, a i ja lično, veoma ponosni. Na kraju, organizatorima se još jednom zahvaljujem na pozivu. Svima želim srećan praznik i sve najbolje do sledeće godine. Živeli!
And the special guest, of course, is our dear co-host, our friend Marija Aleksić, director of the African Museum of Art in Belgrade. Mrs. Aleksić, the floor is yours.
Poštovana potpredsjednice Vlade i ministre kulture i informisanja Republike Srbije, gospođo Gojković, uvaženi gradonačelniče, gospodine Radojičiću, vaše ekscelencije, drage kolege, umetnici, kulturni stvaraoci. Pozdravljam vas u ime Muzeja afričke umetnosti i zahvaljujem što ste se odazvali našem pozivu da učestvujete u radu konferencije Savremena umetnost Afrike u eri pandemije. Posebnu zahvalnost za organizaciju i tehničku podršku ovom skupu dugujemo Robertu Čobanu i kolegama iz Color Media Communications. Mnogo je razloga zbog kojih smo odlučili da upravo na današnji dan održimo ovu konferenciju. U znak sećanja na osnivanje Organizacije Afričkog jedinstva, današnje Afričke unije, 1963. godine, 25. maj se obeležava kao Dan Afrike u čitavom svetu, a brojni kulturni programi tim povodom su godinama organizovani i u Muzeju afričke umetnosti. Od 2017. godine u našoj zemlji 25. maj ozvaničen je i kao Dan prijateljstva s narodima Afrike. Onemogućeni da organizujemo drugačiji skup na kome će se uživo govoriti i slaviti bogatstvo i raznolikost kultura i umetnosti koje izviru na afričkom kontinentu, ali nezaustavljivo zapljuskuju i obale udaljenih regija i kontinenata pa i Srbije, pokušat ćemo ovim online događajem da barem delimično ukažemo na efekte koje je pandemija koronavirusa imala na rad ustanova kulture i na stvaralaštvo savremenih umetnika koji delaju na afričkom kontinentu. Već duže od godinu dana čitava planeta pokušava da se izbori sa nesagledivim posledicama ove iznenadne, neočekivane i nepredvidive pošasti. Ni Afrika nije ostala pošteđena globalne zdravstvene krize i nesigurnosti koja je proizašla iz nje. To je, osim na ekonomiju, privredu, zdravstvo i druge oblasti, duboko uticalo i na rad mnogobrojnih ustanova u sektoru kulture, umetnosti i kulturnog nasleđa, kao i na egzistenciju zaposlenih i nezavisnih kulturnih radnika. Mnoge institucije su ili potpuno zatvorene ili su drastično smanjile svoje aktivnosti i broj zaposlenih, dok su izložbe, muzički i filmski događaji, predstave otkazivani ili odloženi. Posle prvobitnog šoka usledili su intenzivni napori ka pružanju alternativnih ili dodatnih usluga putem digitalnih platformi kako bi se osnovni programi održavali sa minimalnim resursima, a publici pružio kakav takav kontakt sa umetnošću i beg iz zastrašujuće realnosti. Sa ponosom mogu da istaknem da je tokom prošle godine Muzej afričke umetnosti, koji je, podsjetit ću vas, prvi i jedini nekolonijalni muzej afričke umetnosti u Evropi, osnovan 70. godina 20. veka od strane Skupštine grada Beograda, upravo kao simbol prijateljske politike prema narodima i državama afričkog kontinenta i pokreta nesvrstanih, pored svih teškoća izazvanih pandemijom, ostvario projekat od izuzetnog međunarodnog i opšte kulturnog značaja. Naime, zahvaljujući inicijativi počasnog konzula Namibije u Srbiji, Vasilija Boškovića i njegove supruge Drage, imali smo priliku da neposredno pred izbijanje pandemije otputujemo u glavni grad Namibije, Windhoek, i potom organizujemo prvu izložbu savremene namibijske umetnosti u Srbiji. Izložbom Reflect, Namibija 30 godina nakon oslobođenja, Beogradski muzej afričke umetnosti izgradio je most dug preko 7000 km, kojim se otvara prostor za trajni kulturni dijalog, razmenu i preplet umetničkih praksi između Srbije i ove afričke zemlje. Ni pandemija, ni geografska udaljenost nisu bile prepreke za unapređenje razumevanja i saradnje sa drugim narodima i kulturama. Pored toga, tokom karantina organizovali smo virtualni likovni konkurs za decu i mlade, objavili elektronska izdanja naših izložbenih kataloga, ali i realizovali besplatan audio vodič kroz stalnu postavku na 4 jezika koji su zainteresovani posetioci mogli da pretražuju od kuće. Trenutno smo u pripremi Afrofestivala koji će biti održan krajem juna, dok nas na jesen očekuje nova tematska izložba posvećena velikom jubileju koji se obeležava ove godine, a direktno je vezan za našu zajedničku istoriju i bliske odnose sa afričkim kontinentom. 60 godina od čuvene prve konferencije Pokreta nesvrstanih, održane 1. septembra 1961. godine u Beogradu. Kada govorimo o aktuelnoj situaciji u Africi, važno je istaći da je u vreme kada se kontinent još uvek bori sa posledicama pandemije, Afrička unija proglasila ovu 2021. godinu za godinu umetnosti, kulture i nasleđa, smatrajući ih glavnim polugama za razvoj kontinenta. Tokom pandemije upravo su pripadnici kreativne i kulturne industrije u Africi igrali ključnu ulogu i davali značajnu podršku naporima mnogih vlada u borbi protiv širenja virusa. Osim toga, povećana upotreba tehnoloških inovacija stvorila je nove mogućnosti za razvoj ovog sektora, koji se uglavnom ubrzano prilagodio, preselio na digitalne platforme i iznašao nove modalitete za promociju umetnika i njihovih dela. Agenda 2063, koja je usvojena od strane zemalja članica Afričke unije kao nova dugoročna vizija i plan za razvoj Afrike, zalaže se za Afriku sa snažnim kulturnim identitetom, zajedničkim nasleđem, vrednostima i etikom, odnosno razvoj afričke kulturne renesanse i podsticanje duha panafrikanizma. Na ovu temu govorit će u nastavku konferencije i ambasador Alžira, gospodin Šepšub, kao i ambasadorka Srbije pri UNESCO u Parizu, gospođa Tamara Rastovac-Sjamašvili. U ovom kontekstu važno je primetiti da je i Muzej afričke umetnosti u Beogradu kao legat jugoslovenskog ambasadora Zdravka Pečara i njegove tadašnje supruge Vede Zagorac osnovan sa istom idejom razvoja i podsticanja panafričkog duha, očuvanja raznolike baštine afričkog kontinenta i unapređenja dijaloga između naše zemlje i afričkih naroda. Upravo u tom saglasju sa ciljevima koje muzej teži da ispuni i danas, nakon 44 godine aktivnog rada, mogu se pronaći i mogućnosti naše buduće saradnje i podrške zemljama članicama Afričke unije. Svaka kriza, pa i ova, može se pretvoriti u šansu i preokrenuti u svoju korist. To su pokazali brojni savremeni afrički umetnici, izvođači, ali i brojne ustanove kulture, muzeji, galerije ili festivali koji se održavaju diljem afričkog kontinenta, a koji su se, zahvaljujući mogućnostima koje pružaju digitalne tehnologije, uspešno pozicionirali na globalnoj umetničkoj sceni i prisutniji su i vidljiviji više nego ikada ranije, što u svom izlaganju ističe i ambasador Tunisa, gospodin Redžep. Mnogi novi muzeji i galerije otvorili su svoja vrata upravo tokom prethodne godine. Uvaženi ambasador Maroka, gospodin Belhaž, navodi čak nekoliko takvih primera u Maroku, dok neki, koji će predstavljati prava svetska čuda u muzejskom svetu, poput Nacionalnog muzeja egipatske civilizacije ili novog velikog egipatskog muzeja u Kairu, o kojima govori ambasador Egipta Al-Guveli, bez pauze nastavljaju se izgradnjom i najavljuju otvaranje za kraj godine, što sa nestrpljenjem iščekujemo. Naše sagovornice, Desiree Basen Nanuses i Blessing B. Azubike, kustoskinja iz Namibije i Nigerije, uputit će nas u to o čemu govore umetnička dela nastala u doba pandemije, kako se ona izlažu, muzealizuju i kako se pristupa njihovoj interpretaciji. Veoma precizan analitički komentar situacije u kojoj su se našli angolski umetnici, kustosi, teoretičari i drugi, dao je Dominik Maja Taner, direktor vodeće galerije koja okuplja savremene umetnike. Zahvaljujući angažovanju našeg ambasadora u Luandi, gospodina Perišića, ostvarili smo kontakt sa ovim galeristom i kustosom, ali i sa mnogim drugim organizacijama i umetnicima sa idejom da naredne godine, po ugledu na već pomenuti projekat realizovan sa Namibijom, organizujemo izložbu savremenih angolskih vizualnih umetnika. Iz lične umetničke perspektive o tome kako pandemija utiče na proces umetničkog rada, na samo stvaranje, ali i na predstavljanje tog stvaralaštva široj publici, saznajemo na osnovu izjava jednog egipatskog i jednog namibijskog umetnika, Mohameda Saudija i Davida Indonga. Kao što vidimo, mladi afrički kustosi i galeristi nastoje da vode razgovore i razmenjuju iskustva sa inostranim kolegama, bez obzira na to gde se nalaze ili stvaraju, i da trasiraju nove puteve za prodor umetnosti i umetnika sa kontinenta, svi zajedno aktivno učestvujući u njegovoj transformaciji. Na tom neizvesnom, ali ništa manje uzbudljivom putu, uvažene kolege, vrata Muzeja afričke umetnosti su širom otvorena za prezentaciju i promociju umetničkog stvaralaštva i kulturnog nasleđa koje potiče sa afričkog kontinenta. Računajte na nas. Na kraju, ostaje mi da još jednom zahvalim svim današnjim sagovornicima na volji da podele sa nama stavove i razmišljanja na temu savremena umetnost Afrike u eri pandemije, sa nadom da će ona uskoro biti naša prošlost, a da će nakon toga uslediti lečenje kulturom, jer nema tog ekrana ili virtualnog događaja koji može nadomestiti doživljaj direktnog kontakta sa umetničkim delom. Umetnost će i u ovoj situaciji pokazati svoju žilovost i otpornost, a zadatak svih nas je da nastavimo da gradimo nove mostove i da omogućimo neometan protok i razmenu kultura, naroda i ideja, makoliko geografski udaljeni bili. Hvala.
It is our utmost pleasure to welcome today also as distinguished guests the President of the National Foundation of Museums of Morocco, Mr. Mehdi Kodbi, as well as the Director of the National Gallery of Zimbabwe, Mr. Rafael Chichukwa. And now it is time to hear the addresses of ambassadors, our distinguished guests today. His Excellency, Mr. Abdelhamid Shebshub, Ambassador of Algeria to Serbia, Dean of the Group of African Ambassadors accredited to Serbia.
Honorable Madam Minister, Excellency the Ambassadors and members of Diplomatic Corps, Mr. Mayor of Belgrade, Madam Director of the Museum of Africa Arts, ladies and gentlemen. First of all, I would like to thank Madam Maja Gojković, Minister of Culture and Information, on behalf of the group of ambassadors, for being with us today on the occasion of the Africa Day celebration. Allow me to recall that, as the Speaker of the Parliament, she had always been present at the celebration of Africa Day, which is also the day of friendship between Serbia and Africa. I would also like to welcome the presence of Professor Radojčić, Mayor of Belgrade, the city that remains one of the symbols of the struggle for freedom and independence of the African peoples, and particularly for Algeria. I wish to greet also Mrs. Maria Aleksic, Director of the Museum of African Arts, for the efforts she invests to maintain the activity of the museum by organizing various events despite the constraints of the epidemiological situation. I would like particularly to thank Mr. Robert Chauvin and Color Media Communication for initiating this thematic get-together on the occasion of Africa Day, and Mrs. Maja Miskovic, who supervised the organization of this event. Likewise, the rest of the world. Africa was hit by the COVID pandemic. The impact of the continent was probably more severe than elsewhere, due to the fact that Africa has been already fighting against other diseases, such as malaria, AIDS, or Ebola, causing havoc in certain regions of the continent, but also due to lack of means and adequate health infrastructure, coupled with many other challenges, economic, security, and political, which the continent has been facing. However, the picture is not as bleak as predicted by the experts. Since the onset of the pandemic, Africa has mobilized resources to respond to the crisis. The states were at the forefront of response activities by raising awareness among the citizens about dangers of the disease and its prevention, and by reorganizing the existing health facilities to handle the influx of patients. At the continental level, the pandemic has demonstrated the authenticity of African solidarity and the harmony of African institutions such as African Union or regional groupings. This pandemic was also an opportunity of solidarity action between African states. In this regard, I remind that Algeria has sent medical aid to fight against this pandemic to Niger, Mali, Mauritania, Sahrawi Republic, and Tunisia. Today, we can say that the disaster scenario has been avoided, but much remains to be done to ensure protection to African populations against this pandemic. Allow me to address one of multiple impacts of COVID-19 on life in Africa, namely the consequences of the pandemic on cultural life, which is the theme of our today's meeting. I wish to remind that the 34th summit of the African Union held in Addis Ababa via video link in February 2021 has chosen for this year theme arts, culture, heritage, levers to build the Africa we want. Thus, recalling the attachment of our continent of its identity and culture, but also enlightening the opportunity to heighten their role as a catalyst for development and socio-economic integration of the continent. In that context, the most important decision was the one of the Great Museum project. This museum will be hosted by Algeria in Algiers on behalf of the continent. As one of the activities of the first 10 years implementation plan of Agenda 2063. And as a symbolic first step, it was decided to organize the first continental exhibition in Algiers this year at the temporary site of the future Great Museum of Africa. The cultural sector of Algeria had not been spared from the pandemic, following the implementation of drastic measures to protect the public health. Despite the situation, some of activities in virtual mode were organized in 2021, thus making it possible to Algerians public to discover rich online programs. However, 2021 witnessed the reopening of theaters, cultural centers, and cultural space for the public, naturally in compliance with health protocols. In that context, several events were scheduled across the national territory with presence of the public, among which I would like to mention the opening of the International Academy of Music and Dance, the 14th National Professional Theatre Festival, the exhibition Women's Creation with 70 painting. It was opened on 8th of March at the occasion of International Women's Day, festivities on the occasion of the Heritage Month 2021, and other exhibition, open house days in new museums, caravan books, on the occasion of the National Day of Knowledge. But the most symbolic event honoring relation of friendship between Algeria and Serbia has been, without doubt, the second collective painting exhibition, Serbia Seen by Algerian Painters, organized in March 2021, which shows the beauty of landscape, the richness of history, and the depth of traditions of our two countries. In that context, I wish to commend the efforts of Mr. Alexander Jankovic, Ambassador of Serbia to Algeria, for his support to this event. When it comes for the forthcoming activities, we look forward to the 20th International Book Fairs in Algiers, scheduled in November 2021, after cancellation of the 2020 edition due to the pandemic. Finally, I would like to finish on a positive note. This pandemic has placed significant strain on several aspects of our life, but it has revealed as well that culture and art are one of few ramparts that resisted and remained vectors of getting together, and one of the best responses to the social impact of this unprecedented crisis, disrupting all aspects of life, both spiritual and material. Thank you for your attention.
His Excellency, Mr. Mohammed Amin Belhaj, Ambassador of the Kingdom of Morocco to Serbia.
Mrs. Deputy Prime Minister, Minister of Culture and Information, Mr. Mayor, Mrs. Director of the Museum of African Art, thank you for your kind invitation to take part in today's conference on the contemporary art of Africa in the era of the pandemic, to share with the esteemed audience my opinion on this matter. The spread of the coronavirus pandemic has hit the cultural and artistic sector really hard, since most, if not all, shows, theatrical performances, film screenings, plastic art vernissages, and book signing were suspended to comply with health protection measures against the spread of coronavirus. COVID-19 pandemic pushed cultural operators to rethink their modus operandi. They found themselves forced to explore and associate their work with new technologies, giving rise to the development of new information and communication technologies related to support this unprecedented, intensive, and much needed digitalization process. We all agree that culture and art are conveyed, first and foremost, through human relations and interactions. But due to the restrictions linked to COVID-19, Moroccan artists, for the most part, have continued to work and to be creative by adapting their content to the digital format. While some artists suffered from the negative impacts of the pandemic, particularly when it comes to their financial income, others believe that the resulting lockdown has been a real catalyst for their creativity. This break has allowed several artists to focus on their work, be it sculpture, painting, music, or theater, to find new ideas and subjects to explore for works they can present or exhibit as soon as the restrictions are lifted. Furthermore, during this period of pandemic, Morocco has proven to be a real model when it comes to the promotion of culture by showing to the world that it is possible to reconcile culture and health. Our Moroccan expert, the president of the National Foundation of the Museums of Morocco, Mr. Mehdi Qotbi, who is present with us today at this conference, could elaborate more on that. The Moroccan public can now visit museums to admire the exhibited works in accordance with the rules and requirements imposed by the health authorities. Also, it should be noted that the cultural scene in Morocco is experiencing an unprecedented effervescence with the opening of several museums, including the Villa Harris Museum in Tangier, the Music Museum in Meknes, and the start of construction work on the Judaism Museum in Fez, among several other projects which highlight the rich, diverse cultural and spiritual heritage of the kingdom. In the end, I would like to add that regardless of the numerous challenges met by the artists and by all of us for the past year, this global pandemic has certainly been favorable for reflecting on our approach to life and on our relationships with each other. These hard times enable us to understand what we have been taking for granted and to show solidarity to those who are most impacted by the pandemic, not only on the material level, but also on the emotional one. Thank you once again for this kind invitation, and I wish you a happy Africa Day. And now I would like to invite you to watch a short video entitled Morocco as soon as possible that features some of the most beautiful sights from my beloved country. Thank you.
His Excellency Mr. Saif Allah Recep, Ambassador of the Republic of Tunisia in Belgrade.
Dear friends, I would like to start by thanking the African Museum and the person of its director, Mrs. Maria Alexic, for giving us this opportunity of a chair through this online conference on the occasion of the celebration of Africa Day. May I also seize this opportunity to extend my special greetings to Her Excellency Mrs. Maja Gojkovic, Minister of Culture and Information, and my dear friend Dr. Zoran Radojicic, Mayor of Belgrade. As you all may know, COVID-19 was a shock for artists who couldn't perform on stage, couldn't do their shows, as for people who couldn't go to theaters and attend shows as usual. The culture in general was among the sectors that have been deeply affected by the new conditions imposed by COVID-19 pandemic, during which were decided almost in all countries the gathering bans and social distancing. Those measures, sometimes reinforced, sometimes aggravated, have influenced the productivity of artists and thus had a direct impact on their creativity and the evolution of the contemporary art in general. In Tunisia, since the first lockdown, 700 shows have been postponed and all cultural institutions and libraries have been closed. Priority then was given to intensify online cultural offers by establishing an artistic program that people could still enjoy from their homes, including conferences, shows, plays, concerts, and virtual visits to art galleries. This offer served a double role, providing cultural content to a larger segment of not only local society but also of international one, and mitigate the effect of pandemic, especially during the period of lockdown. Indeed, since then, the cultural offer in Tunisia became much more diversified and more than ever available. The large public is able now to reach any kind of cultural content, whatever its intellectual level may be. Writers, painters, singers, dancers, and lecturers were suddenly convinced by the imperative necessity of digitalization of their production or activities. Hence, they ran for being closer to the public through YouTube channels and all types of social networks. Briefly, let's say that COVID-19 contributed to the democratization of culture. Besides, and building on their consciousness about their influence on public, a lot of artists, like actors and singers, stood individually behind the measures undertaken to fight COVID-19 through awareness campaigns supported by government. The closing of national borders has drastically reduced the incomes of tourism industry and thus had repercussions on World Heritage sites and cultural creators and workers. The big number of cultural companies was also affected, and the whole situation unveiled the necessity of affording social protection to artists and the implementation of new economic models. The crisis has furthermore pushed us to tackle better the fragility of museums and to go immediately through the digitalization of their components. Meanwhile, the civil society joined the efforts deployed by the government, whether on national basis or on multilateral one, to discuss possibility of protecting the artistic sector and offer the new and different opportunities to develop it according to the new context imposed by COVID-19. Young people thirsty for art, after a long period of lockdown, worked for opening spaces far from the cities, were together enjoying watching movies, organizing intellectual debates, playing different concerts and shows. It is important to mention that since the beginning of the health crisis, the Tunisian government, represented on in its Ministry of Cultural Affairs was deeply focused on the multilateral given on the crucial and essential role of arts, culture and heritage in the management of COVID-19 crisis on the socio-economic level and on the cultural landscape in the country. Through its permanent mission to the UNESCO, Tunisia contributed in developing an action plan in order to support the sector, including measures of social protection aiming to reduce the impact of COVID-19 on culture professionals. Thank you.
His Excellency Mr. Amr Al-Gouveili, Ambassador of Egypt to Serbia.
First, let me congratulate the Museum of African Art, Madame Maria Alexic, for this initiative to convene this conference, this virtual conference on contemporary African art in the age of the epidemic. It's an important conference, but it even assumes more importance as it commemorates the Africa Day, the 25th of May. It commemorates the African-Serbian Friendship Day, which coincides with that important occasion. And one of the best ways to celebrate the African-Serbian friendship is through art, through culture. So this conference is most timely. I'd like to send and extend high greetings to the high participants of this conference, Her Excellency Madame Maja Gojkovic, Minister of Culture and Information, and of course the Honorable Mayor of Belgrade, Mr. Zoran Radijic. The mere fact that this conference is held under the patronage, the auspices of the Ministry of Culture and Information and the City of Belgrade speaks very loudly for how solid, how close the Serbian-African friendship is. And I will try to maybe summarize our view of African art in the age of the epidemic in maybe 3 C's, just for us to remember it easily. And by doing so, I would like to actually invite you for maybe a visit, a tour, a journey into our residence, the residence of Egypt, which is the residence of also Egyptian-Serbian friendship, the residence of African-Serbian friendship. And I'll invite you to take a tour to discover the 3 C's, that relate to contemporary art in the age of the epidemic. So the first C is connectivity. Connectivity in the wider sense of the word, meaning virtualization, making art virtual, but also connectivity means extending to networks of contacts and to organizing events that are online to bring the community of culture, the community of contemporary art together. And as we say in every crisis, well, crisis is also a C, in every crisis is an opportunity. And this crisis of the epidemic has shown us the potential of the utilization of information and communication technology in the service of humanity in general, but particularly here in the service of culture, and even more narrowly in the service of contemporary art. So the digitalization of the content of contemporary art has proven as an effective method to reach out to wider audiences and to overcome the restrictions related to COVID-19 and the pandemic. Well, COVID-19 is another C.
So the second C would be convergence. Because of the restrictions and the challenges that the epidemic has forced on all of us, we had to converge different forms of art. We had to converge different forms of communication. We had to converge even different forms of convention, of convening. Sometimes we meet online only, sometimes in presence or physically or in situ, and sometimes in hybrid. So convergence of different forms of art, of different forms of culture, has, I think, been an important feature to discover and to explore its potential, and probably will also enhance our ability to reach out to the community of art and of culture in better way and in diversified channels and through different mediums. So convergence, the second C, was also an essential pillar of facing the pandemic.
The third C, and the last one, is construction. And some of you may say, but what does construction have to do with contemporary art in the age of epidemic? Well, to some extent, the relatively slower pace of events and surely in situ events has given us a breathing space where we could restore, renovate, or even construct new spaces and new institutions for contemporary art and for culture. Let me give you the example of Egypt. In the last 2 years, which now unfortunately the epidemic has lasted with us for 2 years, we have finished the construction of the new museum, National Museum for Egyptian Civilization. I'm sure many of you would have watched this magnificent parade of royal mummies going from their old situ into their new situ in the new museum. We're almost finalized the construction of the Grand Egyptian Museum, the largest museum in the world devoted to one era of civilization, but also in Sharm el-Sheikh and Hurghada we open 2 new museums, one in each of those 2 resort cities. So construction and renovation and restoration and devoting the time and that's breathing space to complete projects that were not finalized or even to start and to achieve new projects was an important achievement, at least for Egypt and I'm sure for other countries of the world as well. So construction is the third C. I hope you did enjoy this tour to discover the importance of the 3 C's in dealing with contemporary African arts in the age of the epidemic. First C, connectivity. Second C, construction. The third C, conversions. And I think we discovered how important those 3 concepts, those 3 notions, those 3 principles and pillars are for maintaining the contribution of contemporary art. Well, maybe contemporary could be the 4th C, and even culture would be the 5th C. So the importance of resilience for contemporary art to survive and even to flourish in the age of the epidemic. We started from the Mashrabiyah Saloon, this Mashrabiyah which is a feature of Arab, African, Islamic architecture. We concluded here. We wish you all the best for the promotion of Serbian, Egyptian and Serbian African friendship and solidarity, and contemporary art through those 3 C's can be a major avenue, a major channel for the resilience of culture in the age of the pandemic.
Her Excellency Tamara Rastovac Siamshvili, Ambassador of the Republic of Serbia to UNESCO in Paris.
Sa velikim zadovoljstvom prihvatila sam poziv Muzeja afričke umetnosti i Color Media Communication za učešće na virtualnoj konferenciji koja se održava u sklopu obeležavanja 25. maja, to je Dana Afrike, koji se u Republici Srbiji od 2017. godine proslavlja kao Dan prijateljstva sa narodima Afrike. I u tom kontekstu htela sam da iskoristim ovu priliku da vam u kratkim crtama približim aktivnosti UNESCO od značaja za Afriku. Naime, uz rodnu ravnopravnost, prioritet Afrika je jedan od 2 globalna prioriteta u radu organizacije. I sve aktivnosti UNESCO sagledavaju se u sklopu nastojanja da organizacija u okviru svoje nadležnosti jasnom i ciljanom strategijom pomogne aktivnosti od važnosti pre svega za članice s afričkog kontinenta kojih ima 54. I u tom kontekstu bi trebalo posmatrati i Nedelju Afrike, koja se u UNESCO svake godine održava 25. maja ili krajem maja, a koja se sastoji od niza naučnih, obrazovnih i kulturnih manifestacija kojima se nastoji da približi dostignuća, raznolikost i kulturno nasleđe afričkog kontinenta. Ove godine, zbog sanitarne situacije izazvane COVID-19, ovaj događaj bi trebalo da se održi u 2 faze. Naime, prva faza konferencije, manifestacije, bi trebalo da se drži virtualno u periodu od 25. do 29. maja, a na temu Okeani, mir i održivi razvoj u Africi, što će biti prilika da eminentni stručnjaci i naučnici predstave različite segmente aktivnosti u Africi iz ove oblasti. Druga faza manifestacije bi trebalo da se održi uživo, naravno ukoliko sanitarni uslovi to dozvole, na marginama 41. zasedanja Generalne konferencije UNESCO u novembru ove godine, a na temu umetnost, kultura, nasleđe, poluga za izgradnju Afrike koju želimo. kao stalni predstavnik Republike Srbije pri UNESCO, želela bi da na današnjem skupu istakne da je Srbija snažni zagovornik i podržavalac svih aktivnosti UNESCO od značaja za afričke zemlje i prioritet Afrika. Aktivno smo uključeni u promociju i obezbeđivanje vidljivosti ovog prioriteta uz argumentaciju da prioritet Afriku ne treba sagledavati kao nešto što je od interesa samo za afričke države članice, nego nešto što je od izuzetnog značaja za celokupno članstvo UNESCO. U svakoj prilici ističemo da imajući u vidu aktuelne izazove sa kojima se svi suočavamo, posebno one izazvane COVID-om, UNESCO može i mora da ima aktivnu ulogu na afričkom kontinentu u postizanju mira i održivog razvoja, a u skladu sa agendom održivog razvoja i agendom Afričke unije. Imajući navedeno u vidu, Republika Srbija će se sa velikim zadovoljstvom i ove godine uključiti u obeležavanje Nedelja Afrike. Naime, naša stalna delegacija će 25. maja cirkulisati specijalno pismo, poruku ministra spoljnih poslova Republike Srbije Nikole Selakovića, upućeno ministrima spoljnih poslova svih afričkih država članica, u kojima ćemo još jednom istići istinsku posvećenost Srbije razvoju sveobuhvatnih odnosa sa Afrikom u skladu sa višedecenijskim tradicionalnim prijateljstvom koji nas spaja. Takođe, na poziv Gabona, koji je ovogodišnji organizator Nedelje Afrike u UNESCO, u okviru skupa ću se kao stalni predstavnik Republike Srbije obratiti i predstaviti saradnju Srbije sa afričkim kontinentom. A tom prilikom, to mi je posebno zadovoljstvo da vam kažem danas, će se emitovati i specijalni film o Muzeju afričke umetnosti u Beogradu, koji je pripremio naš pomenuti muzej, jedan od koorganizatora vašeg današnjeg skupa. Sve ove aktivnosti se preduzimaju kako bi se i u okviru UNESCO promovisala naša sveobuhvatna saradnja sa afričkim kontinentom, a Srbija predstavila kao iskreni i pouzdani prijatelj i partner Afrike. Još jednom vam hvala za poziv na učešće na vašoj konferenciji i želim vam uspešan rad.
And His Excellency Miloš Perišić, Ambassador of the Republic of Serbia to Angola.
Dobar dan i pozdrav sa juga afričkog kontinenta iz Republike Angole. Prvo želim našim afričkim prijateljima da čestitam danas njihov praznik, Dan Afrike, uz najbolje želje za prosperitet, mir, napredak i blagostanje na cijelom afričkom kontinentu. Takođe i mi danas u Srbiji obeležavamo Dan prijateljstva sa narodima Afrike, što svedoči o našoj opredeljenosti da sa našim afričkim prijateljima nastavimo da razvijamo i napređujemo odnose i saradnju u svim oblastima od zajedničkog interesa. Malo zemalja, ne samo u Evropi, nego i u celom svetu, može biti ponosno na činjenicu da njihovi odnosi i veze sa Afrikom traju 1000 godina, kao što je to slučaj sa Republikom Srbijom. Naime, naš Sveti Sava je na svom drugom pokloničkom putovanju u svetu zemlju oko 1230. godine posjetio Kairo i Aleksandriju i tom prilikom bio primljen od strane najviših verskih i civilnih zvaničnika toga vremena, o čemu postoje i brojna svedočanstva. I mnogi naši srednjovekovni vladari su bogato darivali Sinajske manastire, manastir Svete Katarine i druge manastire, šireći našu kulturu, o čemu takođe postoje brojna svedočanstva. Možemo pomenuti i našeg grofa Pavla Riđičko, koji je krajem 19. veka proputao sever Afrike i svoje impresije i utiske zabeležio u knjizi Putopisa. Kao i našeg pisca Rastka Petrovića, pisca i diplomate, koji je početkom 20. veka posjetio u 2 navrata Afriku. Prvi put je bio na severu Afrike, dok je drugi put putovao po zapadnoj i centralnoj Africi, bio impresioniran civilizacijom, kulturom i tradicijom afričkih naroda i po povratku u Srbiji objavio knjigu Afrika. Takođe možemo se sjetiti, kako se to u šali kaže, i najvećeg svetskog putnika toga vremena, našeg svetskog putnika Milorada Rajčevića, koji je po završetku Prvog rata putovao po Africi. On je prokrstario Afriku uzduž i popreko, kako se to kaže, sa severa na jug i sa istoka na zapad. Sve svoje utiske i impresije zabeležio u knjizi Putopisa i po povratku u Srbiji objavio 2 knjige pod naslovom Iz žarke Afrike. Republika Srbija kao naslednik Socijalističke federativne Republike Jugoslavije, jedan od osnivača je pokreta nesvrstanih zemalja, pokreta koji je odigrao odlučujuću ulogu u procesu dekolonizacije i borbi afričkih naroda za njihovu borbu za slobodu i nezavisnost. Naša zemlja je po sticanju nezavisnosti afričkih zemalja nastavila da pruža pomoć svojim afričkim prijateljima i generacije mladih ljudi iz čitave Afrike su otpočele i završile svoje školovanje i studiranje na univerzitetima širom naše zemlje i po povratku u svoje zemlje dale značajan doprinos procesu izgradnje mladih afričkih nacija. Takođe i naši brojni stručnjaci iz raznih oblasti, iz građevine, ekonomije, geografije, planiranja, medicine i drugih oblasti su u okviru programa tehničke pomoći boravili u brojnim afričkim zemljama i doprineli unapređenju, odnosno rastu standarda i poboljšanju kvaliteta života stanovnika tih zemalja. Prepoznajući značaj saradnje sa Afrikom i ceneći tradicionalno prijateljstvo i podršku afričkih naroda, Republika Srbija od 2011. godine otpočela projekat Svet u Srbiji i omogućila brojnim studentima iz Afrike i iz svih nesvrstanih zemalja da se školuju i studiraju u našoj zemlji. Imaju mogućnost pre svega da izuče naš jezik, da se upoznaju sa našom kulturom, da se lično i profesionalno usavršavaju i da po povratku u svoju zemlju doprinesu napretku svojih zemalja. Mi smo na te činjenice veoma ponosni i nastavit ćemo da u okviru granica naših mogućnosti dajemo doprinos razvoju afričkih zemalja. Imajući u vidu da najveći procenat afričkog stanovništva čine mladi ljudi, kao i šarolikost njihovih kultura, tradicija, jezika i religija, možemo slobodno reći da kultura u Africi ima svetlu budućnost. Želim ovom prilikom da izrazim zahvalnost Muzeju afričke umetnosti, jednoj od ustanova koja vodi računa o kulturnoj saradnji sa afričkim narodima, uz želje da i u narednom periodu nastavimo da radimo na unapređenju kulturne saradnje i kulturnog povezivanja mladih afričkih umetnika sa našim umetnicima. Angola je svakako jedna od najznačajnijih zemalja regiona juga i centra Afrike. Postoji dosta mladih umetnika koji su spremni i voljni da uspostave saradnju sa svojim kolegama, sa umetnicima iz naše zemlje i mi ćemo se u narednom periodu potruditi da uspostavimo što tešnije odnose kulturnih institucija i naša je želja da kako u Angoli, tako i u Beogradu organizujemo susrete umetnika, kulturne događaje, izložbe i da uopšte doprinesemo kulturnoj razmeni Srbije i Angole. Hvala vam i želim vam svima uspešan rad ove konferencije.
On behalf of the Museum of African Art and Color Media Communications, I would like to thank all the ambassadors for their participation and for sharing with us their observations and experiences when it comes to the functioning of the cultural institutions during the pandemic and their adaptation to so-called new normal. Now, let's hear the artists. It is my pleasure to announce Mrs. Desiree Dibasen Nanuses. She is the acting chief curator and collections curator for the National Art Gallery of Namibia. Mrs. Nanuses, welcome.
My name is Desiree Nanuses, and I am the National Art Gallery of Namibia's acting chief curator. #What's Your Story was a project that we opened on the 9th of November and it ran until the 27th of March. This project was initiated because in a time of COVID, we knew that COVID-19, the pandemic, we knew that we needed to help our artists position themselves in a global discourse, also on virtual platforms. And we needed the artist's voice to be their own voice and not the curator's voice that is telling their stories. Therefore, the initiation of this project was an introduction into what the artist wants to say about themselves, what they are comfortable putting on virtual platforms about themselves, and we were part of this process from beginning till the end, where we said, we just want you to introduce, tell us what it is you want to do. What is it that you would like to create? We didn't ask for a final artwork. We said, we want to be a part of your creative process from beginning till end. And when this project kicked off, it was so exciting because we availed our gallery spaces, our studio spaces. Artists could work in public art spheres. They could let us know if they would like to work on a public art scene. And we got the city of Windhoek involved. We had permissions from them where the artists could execute their ideas that they wanted to materialize. And we were a part of the process from buying the art material for the artists. Whilst they were creating, they had curatorial support from the National Art Gallery, and until the finished project, we framed the work and then we set it up as an exhibition. And in this process of them receiving the artwork and creating the artwork until the final exhibition, their entire process was documented visually in film, in photographs, and everything was being posted on virtual platforms. So it was never a situation where an artist was not present, but it was more the artist who was the only one present in that moment, who was being able to speak about their work, what it is that they want to say, what is the story that they want to tell, what is authentically theirs that they would like to put to the rest of the world about themselves. And the final videos that for each and every participating artist, which was 82 in total, the final videos ended up being a YouTube channel for the National Art Gallery that was open. And these videos you can see currently on www.nagn.org.na, and each artist's creative process is there where they talk about what their idea was, and then you are able to see that idea where they're able to create it and what is then the final product, which was an online exhibition as well on the NAGN website, which is www.nagn.org.na. Hashtag What's Your Story was an introduction also to public art in Namibia. We find ourselves a lot in places where we had to queue up, where the towns was empty, there was no cars, there were no people moving about. And of course we wanted to find out how can we also help people with their psyche. We always look at art as a therapeutic tool, something that can help your mind, that can help you cope amidst a pandemic or a stressful situation or a circumstance, and how art is used in therapy as well. So we wanted to introduce public art as a form of this, to provide that platform where if someone is going through a situation where they are queuing up to buy their flu medication, for example, that they would be able to see public art, and it would take them away to some other place, that it's not, they're still not just seeing and hearing COVID, but that they are able to experience something else. And that was why the introduction to public art was the first of its kind for Namibia with this project. In addition to that, what we realized happened is that artists really, they had the freedom. We didn't limit artists' creative processes. We wanted the artists to be able to create a large work, for example, if they needed to, and not be limited to a bedroom that they are working within, for example. So of course we had situations where in the National Art Gallery, our studio spaces as they were available, the artists' creativity was fully supported, and we received really amazing pieces of work. And I would just like to mention a couple that I think is very important. I mean, when we speak in a time of decolonization and decolonizing art and the public spheres within which we function, the most important for me is that we don't just adopt and re-adopt the white cube phenomena, but that we reinterpret it most authentic to what it means for us, so that we are able to present ourselves as best as possible. So we make use of the spaces available, but then the artists and their stories came through so powerfully. And the one artist I like to mention right now is Davido, who we came to know him as a painter. He went to art school, he studied as a painter, but then he ended up working in a graphic design studio for the paycheck, you know. And then for What's Your Story, Davido has presented us with a work. The technique he's used is pointillism. So it really looks like this pixelated image, right? And obviously we understand that it comes probably from where he's been, the type of work he's doing. But then when Davido was being interviewed for the What's Your Story, he said he calls them Mahangu grains, and because he comes from Oshivambu background, it immediately authenticized to me what he is, who he he thinks he is, and how he's translating what he knows to his heritage and connecting that to the indigenous knowledge that resides within him. Another artist that I would just like to bring to the fore is Hage Mukwenje. There was an iconic image that went around when COVID came about in Namibia about these young boys. You could see that they literally eat probably off the dumps, but then the boys had to put on shopping complex plastic bags as masks over their mouth and nose, and this was a image that was shared around. People were like, where are these boys? We want to buy masks for them. So it's a space where the pandemic happens, we are unable to even take care of the most vulnerable in our society, and in this time when this image started going around, people's humanity came to the fore. People stood up and wanted to support each other and help each other, and Hage repainted this image that we had seen so much on social media in that time, and it is one of the works that he completed for the What's Your Story, with these boys with these plastic masks. And I think it's a thing that will remind us our humanity, how we need to look out for the next person. As much as the pandemic brought with it a negative, it actually helped us be there for each other in a humane form as human beings. And it is amidst this time where I feel with this project we were able to present to the artists an alternative, not only selling artwork physically in a space or physically on by the side of the road, but that they are able to access other avenues to be able to sell their artwork, and that is how we are trying to create a resilience and a persistence amidst the pandemic, so that this is our continuum, this is our new normal moving forward. Even with the new projects that we are coming with, we would like to keep continuing this momentum where artists know that it's not only a physical exhibition where if a tourist comes in and doesn't see the work, then there's no sale, for example, but that there is a way to have a continuum of sales beyond the physical exhibition spaces. And I think it is also very synonymous with this conference where we can be from different countries but have the same conversation. And I think in the time of a pandemic, this is the resistance that we are able to come up with, becoming more unified, to be able to tell a story with different narratives and including all these perspectives into a whole.
I will now read a statement by an artist called Davido Indingo, a Namibian artist who has sent us his written address due to him being on a trip and not being available to participate live in this conference. An illustration is following: youth having difficult times selling Oshivambo traditional food or fukwa during the lockdown times. Business hasn't been good during the lockdown. It affected the livelihood negatively, and pandemic adds to informal vendors' challenges. Why? Street vendors are hit hard by COVID crisis. Street vendors, market traders, and market porters earn their incomes in public. As street vendors have always faced onerous regulations and punitive measures by authorities, including confiscation of goods and arrests. But now, the imposition of local and national lockdowns to contain the spread of COVID-19 is threatening not just the livelihoods, but the very survival of informal vendors and their families in some places. Initial Namibia economic stimulus measures favored big business and the well-connected. Grants, training programs, and low-interest loans designed to help more street vendors get established would steer support to Namibians who are less wealthy and more ethnically diverse. Encouraging this kind of entrepreneurship with its low entry cost is a small but significantly more equitable way to stimulate the economy. Street vending offers still more benefits. It enlivens urban public spaces and increases public safety by making streets more vibrant and welcoming. Promoting street vending can generate employment and help their own families keep people safe and create the vitality and community that is the hallmark of the livable, human cities. This was the statement by the artist who has sent this statement to our conference in written form. The name of the artist is Davido Indingo from Namibia. Now, let's hear Dominic Maya Tanner, director of the ELA Gallery in Luanda in Angola. Here you are welcome.
Contemporary Art of Africa in the Era of the Pandemic. Hello, my name is Dominic Alexander Maya Tanner. I've been living and working in Angola for 12 years now. For the past 6 years, I am founder of the art space Ela, Espaço Luanda Arte, which in Portuguese means she, and is my tribute to women and the fundamental traits of being a woman. We are a leading gallery in Angola, working with contemporary art from Africa with a special focus on Angola. Question 1. Did the pandemic change the way your gallery works, or some ways of exhibiting contemporary art? This is a very important question, and this pandemic has come to show how much we are interconnected, both nationally and internationally, and the importance and impact each solitary act has in the collective. Despite being, I hope, in the exit of this pandemic, it is still premature to draw conclusions. But we can see that if the economic crisis had already caused enormous difficulties for Angolan visual artists, then COVID-19 and the obligation to close galleries, cultural centers, commercial spaces, and condition access to artist studios has ultimately created enormous financial problems for all those involved, resulting in fewer art, in less artists, and in the closing of the few galleries that exist, ultimately causing a poorer supply of art and culture, and consequently a setback in awareness and education of the arts by the public. The entire visual arts sector and ecosystem has been weakened tragically. Question 2. What are the challenges and how are you dealing with them? Again, this is a complex question, but I would say that our main challenges are two. On the one hand, in Angola, to create new local audiences. We have to educate the local public who often still confuses handicrafts with art. I personally feel that there is an international thirst to know Angola, but we must create an even larger thirst within Angola, for example, for artists, Angolan artists, to study the Kianda, which is the Angolan mermaid, or for Angolan artists and the public to get to know what Kalunga is, which is known, it's a Kikungu word, which means the threshold between worlds, and which was a term which originated during slavery. So again, I think we have a huge task to create new local public. On the other level, our priority is also the development of Pan-African research and dialogue. Hence, the project Angola Air, which organizes artistic residencies in Angola for non-Angolans. We want to contribute positively to the deconstruction of the often bad image Angola has and help put Luanda on the map, on an international trail that may even be non-African, but that may have an African reading and approach. Right now, not only is there a desire for foreign artists to come to Angola, but also a greater desire for collectors to acquire Angolan art. If we create a local audience, these works can stay in the country. And if there is a Pan-African audience, they will also be able to travel through several countries, more specifically between museums and exhibitions. Question 3. In which way has the pandemic influenced the work of contemporary artists in Angola? I would say that despite the endless number of art projects around the themes of the mask and coronavirus, I think the pandemic has largely castrated the artist's soul and energy to create new and seminal work. We have seen the strong emergence of virtual exhibitions and sales, but now there appears to be a light at the end of the tunnel, and we appear to be heading towards the exit of COVID-19, where artists are producing new and important work, and galleries are beginning to reopen and show this body of work to a physical public. Recently, UNESCO, with the support of the Angolan government and the American Schools of Angola, has launched a pilot program on the African continent in Angola with a project called Resiliart. Resiliart embodies resilience and art and aims at empowering artists between the ages of 18 and 35 who we know have suffered the most with this crisis in terms of joining and or surviving in the art market. I believe projects like Resiliart, as long as they are supported by private individuals and institutions, will help to create a conscious trend in providing much needed training, best practices, and sustainable support to artists directly. Finally, I would like the Angolan government to choose this negative moment and give it a very positive turning point, giving top priority to the creation of a Museu de Arte Nacional Angolana, whose initials spell MANA, which in Portuguese means sister. The blueprint for this Museum of Angola National Art has already been drawn up. It assumes and gives protagonism to the social and pedagogical importance that the visual arts can have in the cultural fabric of contemporary Angolan society. At the same time, I appeal to the Ministry of Culture, Tourism and Environment in Angola to be somewhat of a pioneer on the continent by digitalizing national archives and creating a website that makes this collection available to the world, with text in several languages.
It is my honor to announce the address by the Joana Taya, the Angolan artist from Lisboa. Mrs. Taya, you are welcome.
Hi, it's Joana Taya from Angola. So in this situation of the COVID-19, these last 2 years, there was moments that the COVID affected in a practical and emotional ways. The practical was that in the beginning, a lot of compromises that had to be postponed. But at the same time, there was room for innovation and room for interaction globally, which created opportunities. And I was able to do some exhibitions along the way, collective digital exhibitions. Also, generally, I always try to turn any situation into a positive situation. At one point, it made me a little bit frozen. I admit the emotional side of it was maybe the hardest at one point, which made me feel a little bit groundless. And but then I also realized that I had everything with me, in me, and around me, all my circumstances. I'm very privileged to have a space where I could create, and eventually, independently of what was going on in the world, I could still create. So maybe the emotional side of this was the most challenging, because I did feel dismotivated. I did feel like I lost a little bit of my goals, because I always worked, but I kind of enjoyed having some deadlines, and I enjoyed to have some separation in between stages, which I would kind of complete my stages with exhibitions. And in this time, they were virtual, and virtual was a really good solution, but at the same time, it wasn't the same experience. It was kind of like kind of a numb experience. I still think that the presential and physical exhibition has a completely different impact, emotionally and physically. And so, meanwhile, I decided to go back to study, because the goal was to keep on growing and keeping on learning. So I managed to study, and that gave me a lot of direction. And I also learned a lot in the process of how to manage my time. Even I had no deadlines. I made myself some deadlines. I made myself some goals, which I achieved along the way. So looking back, and in all this process, and also it's my personality that I always try to look at always the positive sides and rely mainly on my attitude and on myself. So looking back, I think I did use the time in the most effective way according to the circumstances. But I really look forward to be able to go back to meeting people and creating with other people, and also exhibiting and interacting with the viewer. But yes, I did learn a lot. I did two postgraduate courses. I managed to do 2 collections, and I'm gonna start now after this video another collection. And yes, and I kind of found made me reflect a lot, and found new directions where I was. I've learned more of where I was, so to give me room and reflection of where I want to go. So in that sense, yeah, I don't think things are going to change so fast. I think this is something we have to accept, and something we have to just to take the most out of it. At the end of the day, it's up to us how we deal with the situation. That's how I think. The COVID is going to be around for a while, and we just have to be creative and innovative and positive, and just keep on looking at creating goals and being practical in a way. It's a discipline. It's a mental discipline as well, I think. So thank you for this opportunity, and for allowing me to share my experience, and I hope you enjoy. Thank you.
I will now read a statement by Mr. Rafael Chichukwa, Executive Director at the National Gallery of Zimbabwe, who also has sent a written address to our conference today due to the fact that he is preparing an exhibition, hence he was not able to participate in our live broadcast. This contribution to this conference comes at a time when the world is still in the circles of uncertainty because of COVID-19. Here in the continent of Africa, like any other part of the world, we got shaken, and we are still trying to find our way out of this pandemic. Artists and cultural leaders' lives were shattered after having been used in hopping in and out of international airports, restaurants, exhibition openings, art fairs, and biennales. As much as artists are used to working in isolation in their studios, but the fact that many exhibitions and programs got put on hold, it meant that life will never be the same. Our social life got affected, and here at the National Gallery of Zimbabwe and many other cultural institutions in Africa, this was a shock to our life. Our preparedness was tested, and our online visibility was not in place, and we had to fight a fight. National Gallery of Zimbabwe Harare conversation was to be organized online. The idea of an online visibility became a new reality, and with limited funds, we had to create this platform. As the new executive director appointed in September 2020, I was confronted with this new reality from March, when I was in an acting capacity. Up to the present day, myself and my team, we are faced with the reality to rethink, reflect, and redesign our programming. A Cuban artist's solo exhibition entitled Point of View was supposed to open early March, but we could not. It remained in quarantine until November 2020, and we closed the gallery until January 2021. We just took down the exhibition on the 26th of March 2020. It is an exhibition that had spent more months in the quarantine and few months only viewed by the public. Artists whose shows cancelled are still nourishing the pain and trying to recover is a challenge, and some have adjusted to the online platform. In my own opinion, the resilience of African artists got tested, and it remains my hope that we will be able to rise up. As the biggest cultural institution in Zimbabwe, we are mobilizing resources to boost our online visibility and working with artists as well. Our current exhibition, Zimbabwe at 41, is from our permanent collection. As a gallery with a huge permanent collection, we have to make our collection work for us in these challenging times. Now, I give the floor to Mr. Mehdi Kodbi, who is the president of the National Foundation of the Museums of Morocco. Mr. Kodbi.
Sharing culture is what we aim for at the National Foundation of Museums of Morocco, and impel our actions on a daily basis. During the COVID-19 outbreak, lockdown measures have been deployed, and almost all museums around the world were closed. As a reaction to this unprecedented situation, the National Foundation of Museums had spared no effort to keep close and in touch with the audience by incrementing its digital activities. This approach enables use to enhance the museum as culture and educational assets for every home. Among actions taken to serve that purpose, we maintained a golden thread on our social network by posting and the wide range cultural content covering focus on paintings, educational games, contests, but also streaming of Moroccan classical movies. Even when the Moroccan Museum were forced to close their doors due to the COVID-19 pandemic, the National Foundation took actions in order to share the national collections with the world and remain engaged with the audience during lockdown by creating the hashtag Le Musée à la Maison. This approach helped youth to fulfill the educational and informative objectives throughout digital content that highlighted some of our best national and international exhibitions. It is certain that the impact of the pandemic and the damage that has caused far exceed our expectations. It's why museums are urged to rectify these strategies by offering innovative and creative solutions in an era of social distancing to ensure the safety and comfort of the visitors and staff will continuing to serve this mission by offering unique and immersive experience.
It is time to hear Blessing B. Azubike, curator from Nigeria.
My name is Blessing B. Azubike. I'm a cultural producer and an arts manager from Nigeria in West Africa. 2020 was a challenging year for everyone. Artists and cultural organizations around the world were hard hit by the pandemic, and presently in 2021, the world is still trying to get back to normalcy. Late 2019, just a few months before the pandemic hit, I had started the Artist Ladder, an initiative for support, opportunities, education, and career advancement for artists and creatives. When I started the Artist Ladder, just a few months after the pandemic hit, and there were curfews in various cities and countries around the world. And here in Nigeria, a 14-day curfew was imposed on the cities of Lagos, Ogun, and Abuja. It kicked off on Monday, the 30th of March, and was on through Monday, the 13th of April, 2020. And I wondered how we were supposed to go 2 weeks doing nothing. So I came up with the Artist Ladder 14-day art diary. Through this project, I worked with some Nigerian artists to document their thoughts, as well as events in their environment. And so the artists kept some sort of artistic diary by putting out thought-provoking work daily, which was shared on social media. It was an exciting 2-week journey as we explored the creations of these artists regarding the pandemic and relating subjects. As regards the inspiration behind this project, I strongly believe that it is the job of the artist to be a witness in his time in history. In my opinion, it isn't just enough to be an observer. No, the work of an artist must reflect, interpret, and document the times. So in the confusion and uncertainty that enveloped the world with the entrance of the pandemic, people turned to political and religious leaders for hope and answers. And I kept saying to myself, why can't artists profile solutions or give hope in these times? So this was what inspired the Artist Ladder 14-day art diary. My vision was to see the artists dig deep into their hearts and intellect to come up with powerful messages to be expressed on their canvases or whatever medium they chose to express with. I knew that 2 weeks of staying home would become tiresome for everyone, so my desire was to keep the artist inspired and to create pure magic in form of art. In the first 7 days, I let the artists soar with their ideas unguided, so long as they stuck to the agreed theme of documenting the stay-at-home exercise. But from the 8th day, we had varying themes, still within the context of the pandemic, which guided the artists. These themes were simple and very relatable, yet thought-provoking, like If I Were President, which was one of my favorite themes from the collection, because for weeks there was an uproar on social media as Nigerians expected to be addressed by the president. Globally, it was also apparent that the current situation at the time, that is plunging economies, the viral spread, and the shocking death tolls, was leaving world leaders in a confused state. So my thinking was, if the tables were turned, what would we do better? What would we do differently? I was basically saying to the artist, imagine that you were president. If you wore the crown of leadership or bore the title president, how would you bring hope in a trying time such as this? What would you say to the people whom you lead, or what would you do differently? There was also the I would hold your hand through this theme, which was the artist saying, I may not have all the answers, nor the power to control or even put an end to all that is going on, but through my work or through art, I can hold your hand through the tragedy, pain, or fear that you feel. Another personal favorite was the theme, Who Do You Say You Are?, which doubled as the self-portrait theme. My thoughts were that in that period of self-isolation, a lot of people seemed to honestly be meeting themselves for the first time. Before then, the world was in so much of a hurry. It was as though there was no stop button. When the pandemic hit the world unannounced, everything was forced to shut down for the first time. Many were able to hear themselves, see themselves, spend time with themselves, and it would seem that, a lot of people were meeting themselves for the first time. So with this theme, the artist presented a self-portrait created by taking an inward look and giving a glimpse into what their reflection was like when they looked into that proverbial mirror. It was also rather interesting as artists usually would have others as their subjects or muses, but rarely ever themselves. And you could tell that a number of the artists struggled with this particular theme. In the end, some of these works were comforting and, perhaps a ray of hope or sunshine during what may be termed a time of darkness. Other works were a bit like what I would call lamentations, mirroring the conditions and echoing the experiences and thoughts of the populace. In general, the feedback was positive. The artists were thankful for the opportunity, and I was glad that one of our goals for the project was achieved, which was to push the artists, because ideally one piece could take weeks, even months, some take years to complete. But these artists were pushed to create daily. They were also pushed to mentally task themselves to work within the scope of varying themes each day, as well as apply themselves to the interesting times we find ourselves. The project also got some media attention. One of the top TV stations in the country featured the project, and one particular newspaper article about the project gave the rather apt title, "Where There Is Art, There Is Hope." A female artist who participated in the project gave me a call last week expressing her gratitude because the pieces she created during the art diary have continued to enjoy exposure and even win her cash prizes up until last month, which I found intriguing considering that the project happened a year ago. In 2020, everything got grounded due to the pandemic, and the arts was especially hit, with festivals, concerts, exhibitions, and the likes coming to a complete halt. The only solution at the time to keeping the arts running was digitally, so I'm honored that the Artist Ladder 14-Day Art Diary was birthed and played its role as a way of keeping the arts running and relevant in these times, as well as helping the artists adjust to the new reality.
We have with us one more gentleman, Mohammed Saudi. He's the artist from Egypt. Mr. Saudi, you are welcome. Please continue.
Hello, everybody. My name is Mohammed Saudi. I'm an Egyptian ceramic artist and participate in several local and international exhibitions and symposiums here in Egypt and in Serbia and in Poland and in Latvia and in Spain, Croatia. First of all, I would like to thank you for giving me this opportunity to participate my experience of working in a turbulent situation of coronavirus surrounding us. I was nominated by the Egyptian Ministry of Culture to open my second solo exhibitions in December 2020. In the beginning, the museum director informed me that we have to take all possible precautions to avoid infection, to encourage people who are interested in fine arts to attend the exhibitions, such as reducing the attendance rate in the hall to 25 and not allowing more than 10 people to enter the exhibitions hall in the same time. Also not serve attendants any drinks or desserts. It was not so hard to organize the exhibitions with these precautions. However, the director prevented any artwork brochures to be presented to the attendants. I had to think of other ways to solve this problem. The best way was that visitors can obtain an electronic catalog by scanning a barcode by their mobile phones to download the catalog. Moreover, I sent the catalog to all friends who was interested but afraid of the visit. Another good idea also that I can advise people who are in the process of running such as an event is to make sponsored ads on social media. However, it will cost but will achieve high spread of artwork photos to ensure to reach the largest possible number of people interested in fine arts and also in new exhibitions. And thus you have been able to provide at least artwork photos for those who were interested but couldn't attend. There is another idea that I didn't implement but I think it is good, which is to photograph the exhibitions with 3D panorama technique, which enable the people to wander inside the exhibitions if they had actually visited. In the near future, I will give it a try as well. It would be great to spread my art all over the world without traveling. On the other hand, sure, my artistic idea was somehow affected by the pandemic. The exhibition was called Soul Integration, expressing the suffering of the human soul and how it tries to heal it once. The suffering here is not physical but moral suffering. I expressed soul suffering by pandemic sculpture, which are inspired by the movement of the human woman body that wriggles from pain. Her body is full of wounds, but she is trying to heal her wounds and proceed in her life. I used various color symbolism was used in all works to express different emotions and feelings. The pandemic may have affected my philosophy a little, but the main ideas is moral suffering and not physical suffering. Generally, I used to express soul suffering reflected by woman body figures or houses also. They always have been the main subject of my art. Concerning the material, I'm so much interested to search and invent new ways to form ceramic and glaze application. In my last soul exhibitions, the sculpture work was ceramic stoneware that was formed on metal structure after preparing a special ceramic body composition and a special mixture of the ceramic body as well to be thermally compatible with the metal structure during the firing. They were fired at temperature 1100 degrees and the cracks appears, after which the cracks was filled with glaze and fired again at temperature of 1050. This is all about this experience. At the end, I would like to thank you for your kind invitation, and I would like to all people to and I would thank you for your kind listening. Stay safe, be healthy. Goodbye.
Dear audience and distinguished participants, I sincerely thank you for your attention on behalf of the organizers. Dear participants, it was a pleasure to listen to your analysis, hear new information and presentations, as well as predictions for the times that will come after COVID-19 crisis. We have all learned something new, and the passion for the African art is stronger in our hearts after this conference. Dear audience, thank you for following us on the YouTube channel of Color Media Communications. Many warm regards until the next conference is organized by Color Media Communications and the Museum of African Art in Belgrade. Thank you one more time and have a nice day.